Morning. Today, how to increase the numbers of rare hen harriers. Trying to catch the criminals who kill them illegally just isn't enough. We'll hear more from Natural England later in the programme. Hen harriers are beautiful birds that live in the uplands across the UK, but their numbers are precariously low, particularly in England. These low numbers are blamed on predation and persecution by gamekeepers who illegally target birds of prey because they feed on grouse eggs and chicks. Most hen harrier nests in England are on land managed as grouse moor. To try and rebuild the population, a government-led hen harrier recovery plan began in 2016. One element of it is a trial of what's called brood management, where eggs and chicks are taken from hen harrier nests, raised in captivity and re-released later back into the wild so that their parents take fewer grouse chicks to feed them. The Moorland Association, one of several partners in the brood management trial, say that this year has been a real success, with 24 chicks released. The population of hen harriers in England is now at the highest it's been for 100 years, they say. The wildlife campaign group Wild Justice welcomes the increase in hen harrier numbers, but is critical of brood management. I put some of their points to Mark Cunliffe-Lister, the chair of the Moorland Association, who first gave me his response to these latest figures.
It's been a fantastic success. We've shown that as a dedicated team, we can take the chicks from the nest, we can breed them in captivity, we can re-release them on another site, and then they can live a perfectly good wildlife going forwards.
How have the birds that have been reared this way in previous years fared? Presumably they're all tagged, they're all tracked, you know how they're doing.
Yep, no, absolutely. So, I mean, like everything in the wild, they look around for different territories, they move about. I think one of the interesting things has been, when we release them, is they're not necessarily, quite a lot of hen harriers will come back to exactly where they were born and bred. These ones will look around for other territories. So that's been very successful, that they've taken on different territories and gone to different areas.
Have they bred themselves?
Yes, they've bred themselves as well, so they've shown breeding technique. Sadly, some of them have died, but that's the same in the wild. You have mortality going on in the wild.
Wild Justice is very critical of brood management. In fact, they call it brood meddling rather than management. And they published a report last week saying that it is a waste of money. They argue that that money could be spent in other conservation areas and that there isn't really robust scientific evidence to prove that it's doing any good.
The figures speak for themselves in terms of how successful it's been. So going from hardly any hen harriers now to having hundreds of hen harrier chicks that have been bred through the scheme and through the wild. So in terms of Wild Justice, clearly they're anti-grouse shooting, and that's their agenda, and that's fine. But as a conservation programme, I'd say it's been an incredible success, and very happy to sit down and go through the numbers and compare that with other schemes, and we can compare that.
How would you respond to their claim that really this is just a delaying tactic to put off more stringent and effective measures against those gamekeepers who break the law by either shooting or poisoning birds of prey?
Yeah, it's clearly not about that, and it's dealing with any conflict there. So we're seeing birds every day flying around grouse moors with keepers. We're seeing them by tag data. We're seeing them in the air. So clearly any illegal killing is not happening. They would like to say it is, but you can see that with your own eyes that it isn't happening.
Oh, well, there is evidence that illegal killing happens. We do report on cases where gamekeepers have been convicted even for shooting or for poisoning birds of prey.
Yeah, sadly, there do still seem to be isolated incidents.
And where do you see brood management going in the future? Because some would say it's not a very sustainable kind of way forward, is it?
I'd say it's very sustainable. As I say, we're clear that there is a conflict between hen harriers and grouse. I mean, we're not hiding away from that, and that this allows it to be managed. And it's a job that people came together, decided what the best way forward was. Brood management was the way they thought would work best. We put that into practice. We've shown it does work, and I'd say it's very sustainable moving forward.
Mark Cunliffe-Lister from the Moorland Association. We asked Wild Justice to come on this morning's programme, but without seeing more extensive data from Natural England, they declined. Well, Natural England, the government's advisor on nature, is also a partner in the brood management trial project. John Holmes, a strategy director for Natural England, oversees it.
The purpose of the brood management trial is to test the significance of the availability of brood management to moorland managers in achieving that increase.
And Natural England lead the monitoring for this project. The Moorland Association tell us that they have reared and released 24 chicks this year. Does that figure tally with what you have?
That's absolutely right. We work alongside them in that work, and that's spot on.
Can you explain to us who funds this project and how much it's cost so far?
Part of it is funded by the industry itself through the Moorland Association, so actually all the practical work to do brood management is funded by them. Release aviaries, buying tags for monitoring and things. Natural England, we estimate, has spent around £800,000 since the trial started, but that will be on things like staff to undertake sound assessment of the science that underlines the licences to allow it to happen, and alongside that some work on persecution and investigations.
£800,000, that sounds like an awful lot, really.
Well, I would say that sounds good value for recovery of a species that's been completely extinct. Years and years of way more money than that being spent on investigation, but no successful prosecutions whatsoever. We know that illegal persecution goes on, and we're continuing to investigate it. We certainly know that it would cost hundreds of thousands for protection of a single nest by the police year-round. So actually, in terms of the increase we've got, that's really good value for money.
Isn't just cracking down on the criminal element who persecute raptors, birds of prey, isn't that really where the focus should be?
The simple answer is it hasn't worked. You know, enforcement was tried, and it still goes on. You know, we absolutely back enforcement and work with the police to try and find those criminals, but it simply didn't work. The other thing is, to say cracking down on criminals assumes that everybody who manages a moor or owns a moor is a criminal, and the simple fact is that if landowners and gamekeepers come to us and say, look, we want to have hen harriers, we want to look after hen harriers, we're going to work with them because the results are clear.
A point that Wild Justice might well make, though, is that you're dealing with a criminal act by perhaps just removing the temptation rather than arresting the perpetrators. You know, it's a bit like ignoring car thieves in an area but paying for a few cars to be stuck in a garage.
I think a better analogy would be to assume that if you have your car stolen, you assume that everyone you meet near your car is going to steal it. That's simply not the case.
I want to put to you another question as well about Wild Justice's claims. They say they're really unimpressed by the standard of scientific inquiry that's evident in Natural England's brood management study. How would you respond to that?
Well, we've got an independent panel that advises us on that science, made up of ornithological and statistical experts. It is a trial. Things aren't always perfect in both the planning and execution, and you have to react to real situations on the ground. One of the things we're trying to measure is how the availability of brood management has influenced people's opinions of hen harriers and may have resulted in less persecution. That's really hard to do. It's not easy to figure out what questions you ask, but we've got expert social scientists who know how to ask those sorts of questions, and we're still part way through the trial.
I mean, the trial's been going on for 5 years. It's had an extra 2 years added to it. I mean, gosh, is it still a trial? Can you still call it a trial at that length?
It's still a trial because we don't actually know the answer to the significance of brood management in achieving the outcome that we've got so far.
So how many years could the trial go on? When will you be able to say whether it does work?
Well, it'll go on until we get a scientifically robust answer. We're hoping that these next 2 years will significantly increase our information and lead to some better answers and where we might take hen harrier management in the future.
John Holmes from Natural England. And that's it from us for today. I'm Kaz Graham. Our studio manager is Michael Harrison, and the programme's produced in Bristol by Rhiannon Fitzgerald.